Welcome to ACD-Combatives, your combatives and control tactics channel. Please like, subscribe, and share. Hey everybody, here's my next video. Accept my apology, I don't have a technique video. Getting old, I guess, and I hurt my back. I'm not even sure how. And so I'm taking a week off from training. Sorry, Aiken, I know we were going to train together. We'll have to let my old body recover a little bit. But anyway, on to the video. So I'm here to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of reasonable force. And then you notice again, I say this all the time, minimal force and reasonable force are two different animals. So what is the difference? Well, minimal force would indicate that you are controlling the situation with just enough force, barely enough to maintain the use of force. That may sound simplistic, but it's the truth of it. The Supreme Court in Graham v. Connor has told us that force is to be objectively reasonable. Reasonable force, in short. That sounds reasonable in itself. Reasonable force should be reasonable. But how hard is it to control somebody with reasonable force? Well, with the proper training, it's always challenging to control somebody. Unless you are Jackie Chan or Bruce Lee or something, you're gonna have some work on your hands. It doesn't matter how much you train. You're fighting somebody who is extremely athletic, bigger than you, stronger than you, heavier than you, and maybe drugs on board, or they have mental issues, and so their strength is off the charts, and you have to use what's considered reasonable force to control them. The general public loves to see cop shows where the cops have this high level of skill, and I know from real life that that's just not the case. Most cops are just average people. Some of them train more than others, but generally speaking, the general officer only gets anywhere between 0 and 20 hours of control tactics, and that's a wide variety of subjects, in use of force training, and maybe 2 to 4 times a year on the shooting range, which means qualifying with your weapon, not necessarily training with your weapon. Guys, that is grossly negligent training. That's nowhere near enough. And it's not the officer's fault because they've been hired to do a job. They go through 18 to 25 weeks of, generally speaking, this is very average, 18 to 25 weeks of law enforcement training at the academy they went to, depending on state and jurisdiction, blah, blah, blah. And they get a lot of training at the academy. It's kind of like drinking from a fire hose, a lot of information. They're usually young and athletic, and focused because they're at the academy. And then they hit the job and they're working 40, 50, 60 hours a week. And the department is shorthanded and underfunded. And so training kind of falls by the wayside. Or you get like online training courses and read this memo and then sign that you read it, therefore you're now trained. There's a lot of that kind of crap going on in law enforcement, and I'm sure anybody in any career path understands that. They've probably all been there. Take this online training and now you're trained, and if you screw up, you're liable for the screw up because you've been trained. And of course, this whole conversation we're having is based on the fact that, and the assumption that the officer we're talking about wants to do the right thing. There are people in any career path that are shitbags and shouldn't be in that career path, and that's just magnified in a career path such as law enforcement because they have a lot of opportunities and authority to do things if they're bad people. But assuming that every cop wants to do something right, or the cop, generally speaking, most cops want to do it right, it's a scary situation when you just don't get enough training. So something that looks pretty ugly on video happens quite often, and I call it the CNN syndrome, where something ends up on CNN because the officer didn't respond correctly or was grossly outmatched by the situation because he or she thought they could rise to the occasion, but they sink to their lowest level of training, which is quite a bit lower than a lot of people realize in America. So let me give you an example. Military. My veterans out there, I was in the military myself. The United States military is kick-ass awesome at training people to take names, kick ass, and chew bubblegum.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. I'm all out of bubblegum.
Shoot, move, communicate. Great warriors. There's so many military conflicts over the years that are good examples. I love Desert Shield, and as an example, where they sat forever, and then when they went in to go after Saddam, they, regardless if you thought it was right to be there or not, let's not even worry about those politics. They kicked ass. They just mowed down the opposition and kicked ass. But when the military has to stay and do policing operations, it becomes very difficult. Why is that? Because the military is a hammer, and they're excessively good at what they do. The Army's been around since, 1775? One thing they know how to do is train soldiers and they're really good at it. Marine Corps brothers and sisters out there, you too. You're awesome at what you do. You guys know what I'm talking about. But when you have to do policing operations or peacekeeping operations after the fact, it becomes excessively more difficult. And I don't think I need to tell you. You could just Google it, and conflict after conflict where America stays. Afghanistan is a good example. Vietnam is a great example, although that's a war, even though technically it was a policing action. We all know that's not true. It was a war. But America, militaries in general, doesn't matter what branch or country, it doesn't matter. Policing operations is way more difficult than being a soldier. So think about it from that point of view. If you want your police officers to be able to handle the situations they get into, well, you can't give them a job and not train them and expect them to rise to the occasion. They will always sink to their lowest level of training. So defunding the police is absolutely opposite of what we need to do. We need to, of course, make sure we have the right people in there doing the job, but once they're there, we have to give them continuous training. If officers aren't training weekly in some kind of use of force and control tactics, they're never going to catch up. I train weekly, and I feel overwhelmed sometimes. Imagine how I feel for the officers I'm training twice a year, 8 hours total, and I know that that's the only training they're getting. I know most of them don't go and do martial arts and other things on their own. They just don't. I know that for a fact. And there's various reasons for that, but it's neither here nor there. I just know it doesn't happen. So when things go bad and they fall to their lowest level of training and they don't have an option for the big bad wolf they're trying to arrest, and they end up shooting somebody or hurting them excessively because they overreact, because they don't have the proper training, everybody automatically assumes they did it on purpose. Again, some people may have done it on purpose, but assuming that most cops want to do the right thing, and I think that's a fair assumption, you got to look at it from that point of view. What I'm saying at the end of the day, and I'm talking to everybody, Joe Citizen and management alike, somewhere, somehow, something has to happen. And of course, it's not going to happen at my level. It's even not going to happen at manager's level. This has to happen at the administrator level, the bosses' bosses, at the presidential and congressional level in some cases, city mayors and governors and blah, blah, blah. You get the idea. That's where the money has to come from. We need more officers on the street and more training, because when somebody's training, somebody still has to patrol, and vice versa. Anyway, I've beat that dead horse. Please like, subscribe, and share. And if you think I missed something, or if you have a point of view, you can call me, write me, send me a raven. It doesn't matter. We'll talk about it. All right, everybody, take care and stay safe.
Bye-bye, boys.
Have fun storming the castle.
Think it'll work?
It would take a miracle. Bye-bye.
Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out.